So it's time. You're thinking about selling your house. Congratulations. Moving on to the next step of your life. But you've been hearing a lot of stuff in the news about how it's a buyer's market and right now it's hard to sell your home. There's a lot of inventory. Well, okay, so you're a little afraid and you want to know how you're going to best sell your home to get the most money for the shortest amount of time with the least amount of difficulty and trouble. Well, okay, so then let's talk about what 3 things you can do to make sure that you sell your house fastest, highest price with the least amount of issue. My name is Nancy. I am a realtor here in Northern New Jersey with Nancy True Homes. And in my 17 years in the business, I have sold over $500 million in real estate. All right, let's get started. Let's talk about these 3 things. But first, why don't we define, and then you can sort of look at your market and figure out what kind of market you're in. Are you in a seller's market, a buyer's market, or a balanced market? So let's define those things first. Okay, a seller's market, which by the way, here in Northern New Jersey, we have a very strong seller's market still. A lot of the rest of the country, you're seeing buyer's markets, some balanced markets. But here, we still have a very strong seller's market. That's defined by, our buyer demand outpaces our inventory supply. We are an intake market. There are a lot of people still looking to sort of move into our area. So we have a lower day on market, things sell faster, higher prices. We are still seeing bidding wars and extreme seller lock-in. People just really aren't moving, so there's not a lot of inventory. Now, if you're a buyer's market, you're probably seeing the opposite, which is the inventory supply is outpacing the buyer demand. So you're going to see longer days on market, more potential price reductions, and buyers have more negotiability in their price and terms. Now, if you have a balanced market, you're probably seeing between 4 to 6 months of inventory supply. You're going to see prices keep up with inflation, but you're not going to see them necessarily go over. The seller flexibility and the buyer negotiability is going to be a little more balanced, and you're going to see more predictable market trends. So right now you're probably thinking, well, which market am I? But the truth is, it doesn't really matter what market you're in. As a real estate agent that consistently lists a lot of homes, to me, it doesn't really matter what kind of market I'm in, because even if I'm in a seller's market, there are houses that perform better than others. There's towns or neighborhoods that might perform better. Ultimately, the real estate market can be kind of lumpy and specifically unique to your home. So it doesn't matter to me what market I'm in. I'm going to do 3 things to make sure that my house sells and sells quickly and sells well. The first thing is, regardless, I'm going to set a competitive and realistic price for the home. Truthfully, I like to price lower than the competition because when there's plenty of homes in the market, you need to be attractive to buyers. So you want to bring all the attention to your house because your house is going to perform better the more buyers see the home. Because the more eyeballs you can get on the home, the more possibility you're going to get offers. And with competition, you're going to get better offers. You'll have more leverage to get better terms as a seller and possibly get a better price as well. Sometimes what I'll do is I will start with what we call a comparative market analysis. That's a CMA. And that is us using the homes that have sold in the area that are similar to your home within close proximity with the same amenities. And we use those to price the home that you're trying to sell. Now, on occasion, if you have a very unique property, which sometimes you run into those, if I have to, I can do a pre-listing appraisal. So I can get an independent appraiser to come in and provide an objective opinion of that home's value. And then that'll give us sort of a good foundation for pricing. Although, to be honest, in my experience, if we are having some difficulty pricing, oftentimes so does the appraiser because it is a unique property. But the most important thing all in all, is you really have to avoid overpricing. Listing too high is going to deter any buyers because buyers are going to look at it and go, this feels high in comparison to the other things that have sold in the area with the same features. And that's going to result in you having to do price reductions, and it's going to take longer to sell. And once you have to do that, then honestly, it can be the death knell of pricing of a house. So you want to make sure that the goal is, to me, it's kind of like football, right? You're the quarterback, and the quarterback throws the ball to where they think the running back is going to be, not where the running back is standing, right? Because that's really what it is. Any real estate market is kind of a moving target. So you really need to be following that market and throwing your pricing to where you think the market's going to be, not where it is now. Because there is nothing worse than chasing a market down because you've overpriced to begin with, all right? Number 2, doing the best to attract the buyers, right? You have to make your house as attractive as possible. So enhance that curb appeal, stage effectively. Your first impressions are absolutely crucial. Think of it as like a debutante party, right? It's your stepping out party. So you want to make sure that when you come out, you look your best, because that's going to be the best way that you ensure to attract as many people to the house as possible. So make sure you handle the exterior curb appeal and make sure the interior of your home is ready to go. All right, there's nothing a buyer loves more than the feeling that it's move in. Even if it requires updates, if it feels nice and clean and move in and livable, they're going to be more attracted to it than someone who says, oh, I got to spend $100,000 before I even move into this house, right? Don't forget to use professional photography. I don't use them as much as I used to, but if you're going to sit on the market a little bit longer because of your day on market, then doing virtual tours or virtual walkthroughs are helpful because it gives the buyer a chance to kind of see the house before they show up in person. Make sure your detailed listing descriptions showcase your home's unique features so that you can sort of attract as much attention online as possible. So like I said, what makes your house stand out? What are the unique selling points? Point those out. Proximities to amenities, transportation, any sort of energy efficiency things that you've done or recent upgrades, definitely highlight those. Now, also, if you're a seller, please make sure that you are flexible with your showings. There is nothing harder for a buyer and more of a deterrent to a buyer than not being able to get into a house that they really want to see, because it puts in their head this idea that, well, the seller's sort of difficult. And we don't want that, right? We want the buyers to feel that the sellers are going to be easy to work with and amenable, right? So be sure that you are flexible in your ability to let people into the property. Listen, if there's going to be any sort of concerns that the buyer may have, we want to address those things proactively. We want to make sure that we anticipate any objection that that a buyer may have to your property. And if we address those, then to be honest, you're taking away all the no's, right? You're taking away the things that would make a buyer say, maybe not this one. And if you take away all the no's, you're kind of only left with yeses. So that increases the chance that a buyer is going to want to make an offer on your property. On the off chance that you are in a market where it really truly is a buyer's market, then offering some sort of incentives is not a terrible thing, right? Offer to cover some potential buyer closing costs, maybe provide a home warranty. There are lots of things that you can use to incentivize a buyer to come. I was going to say right now, a great way to do it would be to incentivize to pay for part of the buyer's agent commission. You can always do that. That's always very negotiable. So these are some great ideas to kind of attract buyers to your house. But you want to make sure that when you start and enter the market, you are just a very welcoming property that buyers want to come to. All right. Listen, number 3, and this to me is the most important thing, is please stay realistic about your home and be adaptable. In a buyer's market, you've got to be prepared that buyers are going to feel like they have more leverage, so they may offer lower than your asking price, all right? that is something that you have to be prepared. You have to be prepared to do that negotiation. It's important to monitor this market that you're in and adjust as needed, right? Pay attention to your buyer feedback, because if you're seeing the same feedback from the buyers over and over again, then you know this is something that is a buyer concern and you should probably address it. Make sure you're following those market trends and be willing to adjust your price or strategy if it's necessary. And most importantly, please, please, please understand that in the end, do not let emotions, which I think for a lot of house sellers, that is a thing, right? Emotions are a huge part of it. You're selling the house, that you grew up in, or you're selling the house that you raised your kids in. You're selling the house where you had family over for Thanksgiving, and this is the table they sat at, and all these other things that really sort of put an emotional price tag on that house for you. But unfortunately, when a buyer comes to a house, they're not there to buy your emotional experience or your memories. They're there to buy, ultimately, a home that they see as a blank slate for them to make their own memories. So you have to make sure that you're making your decisions, especially your pricing decisions, based on market data, objective assessments, feedback, and not your personal attachment to the home, okay? By understanding the dynamics of what your market is and implementing these strategies, you're going to increase the chances of pricing your home right and getting a successful sale. All right, guys. So thank you so much for listening. And listen, if our videos are helpful to you, please like, comment, and subscribe so that we can continue to help others with our information. And I look forward to seeing you guys next week.